Hey everybody, this is in case you missed Snapshot on November 2nd. We've been talking about God's story, right? We finally finished it up this week. We've been doing it for a long time, but it's super important because we want to get the context of what God is doing all the way from Adam and Eve up until this point. What is going on, right? It's this big narrative of God and how much He loves people. He created us to be in relationship with Him, and we somehow messed that up by choosing our will to do whatever we want instead of what He's asked us to do, what He wants us to do, right? And it's been that way all through history. And instead of writing us off or getting mad at us and saying, forget about those people I created, I made a mistake, He gave His life for us as Jesus so we could be in right relationship with Him. So that's this whole narrative, this big story that God is unfolding. We can read it all through the Bible, all throughout history of what God has done in amazing ways in people's lives and through people that love Him, to bring people close to Him, to make our relationship with Him right, to reconcile us, to free us from our sin and the burden of that sin, the penalty of it, which is death, right? So, if you didn't come, we didn't really have a talk last Sunday. We just went into the extra room down there by the gym, and we had a bunch of stations set up where you got a chance to do some things. And we talked about all the stories we went through. We talked about Lazarus and David and Paul and Esther, and we read a verse from Ephesians about how Christ is the cornerstone and the rest of us are built upon Him. And that's just another way to remind us that what God is doing is building this great big narrative story, and we are all a part of it, right? If Jesus is the cornerstone of a building, and all the other people that came along, the disciples and all the people after, the people that set up church history, helped us get the Bible together, guys who write songs, people who preach to people, people who have prayed for people, people who just sacrificially made food for people who didn't have food, right? All of those people are part of this great thing that God is building. And you and I can be part of that. If we have trusted Jesus, we are already part of that. And if not, God is inviting you in to be part, not just of the story of someone that gets saved and comes to Him, but a part of telling that story to other people, of showing that kindness and showing that love that God gave us through Jesus. He's asking all of us to do that. And we finished our time up with something really amazing, the best example of what we've been talking about, of this big story that God invites us into. And we do it through communion, right? So we take a loaf of bread. This is reminding us of something that Jesus did with His disciples right before He was captured to be crucified. He was having a meal, a Passover meal, and we'll talk more about that sometime. But He was having a meal, and they have bread there, even though it wasn't big fancy bread like this. It was like flat, unleavened bread without yeast. So it was very flat. But anyway, that's what we use. And He took this bread and He broke it and He said, "This is my body broken for you. Take it and eat it," right? Like He said something amazing, right? Take and eat this. This is my body which is broken for you, knowing that He was going to be punished for our sins, right? Not just put on the cross, but He was beaten and probably would have died from the wounds He got because He was beaten so badly for us. And then He took a cup that was full of juice or wine, which in many languages is translated the same way as blood, right? Like the color is called blood. And it's because of what Jesus did. And He picked up this, and it's kind of made it all in one, that juice and wine reminds people of Jesus' blood. He says, "This is my blood. Take it and drink it." And it's given for the forgiveness of sins, right? Jesus said that. We are part of it. And we read a verse in Corinthians where Paul, who we learned about, talked about how when we take communion, it reminds us that we are all in this together, right? Everyone that loves Jesus, we are all one part of this big family, part of this giant story, telling everyone about Jesus' love, right? So if you weren't there, we have something up in the youth room now, and it's a big piece of paper that has some stories from the Old Testament, a lot of stories from the Old Testament, some stories from the New Testament. And then we gave you guys a chance to write down where your story fits in. Maybe a time where you've seen God move, or something you've seen where you got closer to God. Maybe a time where you trusted in Him. Whatever it is. And it's still up on the wall. And we're going to give you guys a chance to keep writing that in case you missed this week. Because it's amazing to see that God did all these amazing things. That, yeah, Paul and David and Esther did all these amazing things. and God used them, but God still uses us as well. So that's something that we want to continue to think about, even though we're done with our story series, that Jesus broke his body, shed his blood, gave his life for us, and he invites us to share that amazing news with everybody else. So we love you guys, and we'll see you next week. God bless.